All right, good evening. It's 6:31. We're gonna get started on time, and hopefully there's no tornado warning this evening. For those of you who were here last time, we sought shelter, or if you watched on the live stream. So it was definitely an exciting presentation night. So welcome to our second night of Brother Bernardine Senior Capstone Project presentations. We are going to begin tonight, as we do all events at Bishop Kelly, and that is with prayer. So let us remember that we are in the holy presence of God. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. God of all, we give you thanks for the occasion to gather this evening. We are grateful for the gifts that you have given us and for the opportunity to be part of the Bishop Kelly community. You have generously blessed these students, Aubrey, Kate, Will, and Emma. Touch their hearts so that they use their talents for the benefit of others and guide their path as they become the people that you call them to be. We offer this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen. Mary, Queen of Peace, pray for us. St. John Baptist de La Salle, pray for us. Live Jesus in our hearts forever. Okay. So we have 4 exciting presenters tonight, all with very different and unique topics and projects, as have all the seniors had unique and different and exciting topics and projects this year. So I am really excited to get started. Uh-oh, what's going on there? I don't know why that did what it did. Why won't it let me present yours, Aubrey? Let's do this. Let's open it again. There. Look. Maybe. I'm going to wait for it to. Okay. Are we loaded? Almost. Okay. All right. So, Aubrey is the daughter of Robert and Christy Gressef. In addition to her work as a Brother Bernardine scholar, Aubrey really isn't busy at all. I'm just kidding. Aubrey is the Stuco recording secretary, the NHS Life Events coordinator, founder of the Comets for Inclusion Club, a Comet ambassador, Kairos leader, and a member of the girls' soccer team. And if this doesn't keep her busy enough, she owns Baked by Obs, her own cookie decorating business. She's on the Little Lighthouse Youth Advisory Board, is an attendee of a weekly Bible study, a volunteer with the Down Syndrome Association of Tulsa, and she's a North Tulsa Learning Center volunteer. Excuse me, Aubrey was named to the Winter Sports Homecoming Court, has been named World History, AP Lang, and AP Gov Student of the Year. She was awarded the St. Michael's Book Award for Service in Social Justice, and she's a National Merit semifinalist. Aubrey's plans for fall are currently undecided, but she has applied to 4 different schools. But no matter where she goes, her career goal includes developmental pediatrics. Aubrey Gressef.
Okay, so hello everyone. I am Aubrey Gressef, and my project is on the impact of inclusion. So what I ultimately decided to do for my project was a documentary on the reality of inclusivity in the 21st century. So I'm going to start with sort of listing off like my thesis statement. So the impact of including people with disabilities in both the workplace and academia has positive effects on people with and without disabilities, thus necessitating the growth of inclusive programs in all aspects of society. So I'm going to start with just a quote by Brother Bernardine, because he is sort of the namesake of our program. So when a person puts a limit on what he or she will do, he or she has put a limit on what he or she can do. And so this quote sort of applies to my project because oftentimes people with disabilities are like society puts limits on what people with disabilities are capable of in our society, and so that's sort of what my project aims to tackle, just like that stigma. So I am going to start with my presentation process and sort of the way that I'm going to work through my project. So I'm going to start by defining inclusion and then telling you guys why this is so important to me and why I chose to do this topic. And then I'll get a little bit more into the specifics of my project and then sort of zoom out and sort of see the big picture and how that plays a role into our world today. So I'm going to start by defining inclusion because I think sometimes it works best if you have like a direct definition of what I'm talking about. So, according to the U.S. Department of Housing and Human Service, inclusion is a state of being valued, respected, and supported. It's about focusing on the needs of every individual and ensuring the right conditions are in place for each person to achieve his or her full potential, which sort of showcases that inclusion is more than just allowing people with disabilities to partake in typical activities. It's about ensuring that every single person's needs are met while their dignity as an individual is preserved. And so why do I care so much about inclusion? So first, I have a couple personal experiences and friendships with people with disabilities that have really changed my way that I view the disability community. So my first experience working with somebody with a disability was in first grade. I had a friend named Lexi who was in my class, and we ended up sitting next to each other just sort of coincidentally. And quickly we developed a little system where I would finish all of my work, and then I would turn to helping her and assisting her complete hers. I was always a little bit bothered by the way people treated her differently than they treated me or some of my other typically developing peers. And so that really just, like, I guess lit a fire. I was like, I know that I can be friends with them, and I wanted everybody else around me to be able to be friends with them as well. And so my second reason for choosing to do my project on inclusion was that I came to notice, sort of through personal experiences as well as just different things that I would read, that there is a lot of injustice faced by people with disabilities. And then I also began noticing whenever you sort of become aware of something, you begin noticing it a lot in your like everyday life. And so I started seeing whenever people would be included, and then I started sort of questioning, like, why aren't people included everywhere and all of the times? And so next is sort of about my project process. So whenever I started my research, I sort of began questioning, like, what am I passionate about? Why would I want to sort of research this? And then that sort of guided my project, and ultimately, my project relies a lot on my research that I did my sophomore year. So during my sophomore year, I already knew that I really liked people with disabilities, and so I ultimately decided to do my project on Down syndrome. And so Down syndrome is a chromosomal disorder where a person has a third copy or partial third copy of their 21st chromosome. And I basically just dove right in. My paper ended up being 19 pages long, and I studied, and I covered lots and lots of different topics that had to do with Down syndrome, from like the history to the impacts today to what their education can look like. And so in researching, I was absolutely fascinated. I'm a little bit of a history nerd, so this was actually my favorite part of my whole entire project, was just like studying like the history of it. And so I'm a huge believer that like history shapes the future and has a significant effects on like what our world looks like today. And so one thing that I researched was the eugenics movement. And so this began with Sir Francis Galton's 1883 book, The Essay in Eugenics, which gained popularity in the United States. And eugenics is basically, it's like the study of like, I don't know the best way to verbalize it, but you'll sort of see like the effects of it. So this essay led to the widespread sterilization and institutionalization of people with disabilities. So essentially it was sort of like the fence that got placed around people with disabilities. This was actually ended up being the fuel to the fire of the Nazis in their like pursuit of basically demolishing the Jewish community in Germany, and they actually began their projects working on people with disabilities with the T4 euthanasia project, which helped them to perfect their mass destruction theories. And it wasn't until 1936 that the first disability advocating rights group actually formed, and so that horrified me, and it actually led me to realize that effects of these policies are actually still in place in our world today. So whenever I started my research, part of the thing that I already knew was that I knew that people who were diagnosed prenatally with Down syndrome, there were extremely high abortion rates all over the world. In the United States, not especially in the United States, but even the United States, and I view the United States as a quite progressive country. The rates were outstanding, soaring in the 90s across Europe and 66% in the United States. And lots of parents who had decided to keep their child with, or to keep their baby that they were expecting with Down syndrome, spoke of like having heavy-handed, encourage encouragement from doctors to terminate their pregnancy because they believed that they would not live a life worthy of living. And so I was horrified by this, and it sort of led me to question like why. It wasn't necessarily about the abortion itself, but it was more about like what is the motivation for this particular group being targeted by these extremely high numbers. And so looking back at the eugenics movement and how that shaped not only the United States but also Europe, it all sort of began to connect. And this was whenever I started getting really excited, because it was like, wait a second, if we can see where the root cause of something is, we know how to solve it, and we know how we can target solving that. And so even today, there are still extremely high abortion rates, and there's very little media coverage of people with disabilities. And although inclusion is, you will see inclusion starting to sort of take root in the workforce as well as in different schools, there's still very minimal compared to typically developing opportunities. And people with disabilities can actually still be paid sub-minimum wage, which actually horrified me. And so finally in 2010, President Obama removed the term retardation from laws. And so that was like a big step sort of in the right direction from sort of making that distinction that we're on to like a new era, a new way of referring to people with disabilities and a new way of treating them. And so for me personally, I started seeing that people with disabilities are capable. I already had this predeceived like knowledge of this, and it was super important to me, but I love facts and I love data, and so seeing how all of these different data all point into like the same result is that people with disabilities are capable of having an education, they're capable of working in the workforce. I was just like, I need to do more research on this. And so for my project, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was like, this is all super important information, and it's something that I'm super passionate about, but there were about 800 things that I could have done to sort of spell it out. So some things I considered writing a book, making a video, interactive lessons, a seminar series at one point, and so I decided that I would try my hand at videography, and I'm not super tech savvy, so that was a little bit scary, but I decided it would be fun. And so I knew that I wanted to sort of research about like what inclusion looked like in the Tulsa area, because I knew that Tulsa is a very inclusive city, and it does do a very good job of making sure that people of all abilities and all kinds are included and given the opportunity to thrive. And so I ended up reaching out to 9 people, and I ended up interviewing 4 programs and 5 people across 2 states and 3 cities. So I ended up interviewing Barnabas Prep, which is a preparatory school for, or a secondary education school for people with disabilities in Branson, Missouri. Sooner Works, which is a collegiate program at the University of Oklahoma for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The Marquette Rise program, which is their inclusion program, and then Not Your Average Joe in Broken Arrow, which is a coffee shop specifically targeting growing the work opportunities for people with disabilities. So there were some challenges to my project, such as finding people to interview and setting a time, because I do a lot. And so it was really hard for me personally to find time in my schedule, and then getting that to match with the people that I was interviewing, that was difficult. I actually ended up having to get a day excused from missing school so that I could go down to Missouri and interview. And it was super fascinating to learn about how each of their different programs were able to provide for people with disabilities in a different way, and how that ultimately didn't only shape the person with disabilities and their ability to contribute to society, but also how each of the people who I was interviewing really grew as a person, and their institution grew as an institution for the better for every single person partaking in it. So I did make a documentary, and so I believe I'm going to show you a little sneak peek of what that ended up looking like.
Well, hi, my name is Chris Lurkey, and I am a second-year med student at the University of Oklahoma College of Medicine. While as an undergrad student, I had the opportunity to be one of the founders of Sooner Works, a transitional program for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
My name is Maggie Bond, and I am from the Broken Arrow area. And with Not Your Average Joe, we are a nonprofit coffee shop that creates quality, holistic employment for people with special needs.
I'm Barbara Joyce, and I teach 3rd grade at Marquette. I've been here for 16 years.
Hi, my name is Natalie Dill. I was a para here at Marquette for 4 years, and I've been the elementary resource teacher for 2 years. Marquette's RISE program is an inclusion program. RISE stands for Religious Inclusive Student Education, and that just means including those students with disabilities in our classrooms.
Hi, I'm Hannah Cook, and I'm the Operations Manager here at Barnabas Prep. Barnabas Prep is a collegiate program here in Branson, Missouri, and our goal is just to equip young adults for a life of societal significance and importance in Christ.
And getting to learn that they are competent individuals sitting alongside them in their university courses is a huge lesson.
We all desire and want that human connection.
It's really not that intimidating to include others who have different abilities because they have so much to offer.
We are growing children who are going to go out into the community and be accepting of people, and that's what it's all about. And
Disability does not mean inability. It means adaptability.
Inclusion is accepting everyone.
It's not this scary, intimidating thing just because somebody has different abilities than you. It's actually a great friendship opportunity.
No matter what, inclusion is possible, and it's worth it.
And so you don't have to come in with like a bunch of degrees to know how to work with somebody who has special needs. You just have to be open and willing.
And for the kids who are what we call typical learners, they learn things from the kids who are in the RISE program. It's just so great.
When we create opportunities for people to be included and for people to be known, then it opens our mind.
Everybody benefits from it. Kids with disabilities, kids without disabilities, everyone learns.
So there's really no excuse to not be included.
Well, hi, my name is Chris.
Oh, here we go, I think. Okay, here we go. Okay, so that was a little sneak peek of what my project was all about, and so I sort of took out like the little informational section so you could sort of see like the root of like the effects of inclusion, because that's really what I wanted to highlight, is the impact of inclusion doesn't just like reach those who have disabilities, it expands beyond that and into like the world around us and the community around them and the people who are working in those institutions. And so obviously my video was not without flaw. You could hear some wind in the background. There were some clips that were a little grainier than others. And so it was very much a learning curve. It was about finding which places were best to film in and what places were, and what questions were the right ones to ask, because I think something that goes a little bit underrepresented is you want people to answer the questions that you want, you want them to answer the way that you, I guess, want them to answer. And so finding those bits of information and those questions that give you the greatest opportunity to sort of encapsulate what I was actually researching was really important. And so I sort of have broken down the findings of my projects into 5, I guess, main pillars. So people with disabilities are entitled to the same opportunities as their typically developing peers. This was sort of like the driving force of my project, along with like the research that I did. Everybody's entitled to the same opportunities, and so then critically evaluating our current systems for inclusion can help our society to improve as a whole. Again, it's just emphasizing the fact that the impact of inclusion stretches beyond just those with disabilities. And then the idea that inclusion doesn't have to be complex or overemphasized. It can be just about like hiring somebody who has a disability to fill a job that could be done by a typically developing person, but just sort of extending that hand and being willing to make that adaptation so that they're able to have a job, because over 80% of people with disabilities are unemployed as adults. And so my next pillar, in order to fully lead our world toward greater acceptance of those with disabilities, we must educate and include them in all aspects of society. One common theme that I saw throughout my interview process was that a lot of the programs believe that part of the reason why people are hesitant to include is because it's not something that's seen every single day, and it's not something that people are exposed to. But the earlier we begin integrating people with disabilities into society, the more likely both they are to be accepted, and the more likely people are willing to be accepting of them. And then my final pillar is that people with disabilities are capable of completing jobs and tasks that contribute to a flourishing society. A lot of times, because of the stigmas surrounding people with disability, thanks to the eugenics movement and different movements similar, people believe that people with disabilities are incapable of contributing to society in a meaningful way. But all of the different people that I interviewed all had different approaches to integrating people into society, and each of the people with disabilities are doing things that are meaningful whenever we give them the opportunity. And so what does this mean to me? So to me, this is everything. Like, this is what I want to devote my life to. So it means purpose and drive. It means addressing a social justice crisis at its front. It's getting on the front lines and making friends with people with disabilities. A lot of times, because of stigmas, people are hesitant to make friends make friends with people who have disabilities, and it makes me so sad because there's so much that I learned from them, and there's so many friendships that have flourished just with people with disabilities who go underspoken to and underrepresented, just like in our general activities as high school students. And it means seeing each individual for who they are, not what their diagnosis is or not what they look like. And this stretches beyond just people with disabilities. This idea of seeing people for who they are and who they are beyond just like what they look like is super important to our society today. We've seen lots of recent movements like that in like our social, I guess, like aura of the United States. And so to the world around me, it means that we can each look at everybody for who they are. And it means that we as a society can grow in order to just best help everybody to contribute to our world. So thank you guys so much for listening. I really love doing this project. And so I wanted to say a special thanks to my parents, Robert and Christy Grosef, to Miss Tyler, and then to Miss Bendel, who was my project sort of overseer, Miss Henson, who was my staff member who helped me throughout my whole project, and then specifically to my friends with disabilities, because it's because of them that I'm up here talking about this, and it's because of them that I want to continue doing stuff like this in the future. To all of the people who I interviewed, and then most importantly, God, because he is the forefront of my life, and he is the reason why I'm being given the opportunity to speak in front of you guys today, and the reason why I've been given the amazing chance to just see people as they are and be given a stage where I can live that out. So if you guys have any questions, I would love to answer them. So. Yeah. I think that the most important thing that we as individuals can do is just recognize. We can recognize people with disabilities around us and acknowledge their ability to do great things. So whether it's like walking up to somebody, talking to them, holding a conversation with them, and just respecting them as an individual, because a lot of the issues that like our society's facing with inclusion is stigma and fear, because we're either not exposed to people with disabilities, or we don't know how they're going to respond to a question we ask. But whenever we look beyond like maybe the way that they react to a certain question and see them like for who they are as an individual, we're connecting with them as a person. And in the same way that like we want to connect with people, they want to connect with people as well. So just making friends would be my number one recommendation. Oh, that's a great question. Thank you so much, first off. So what I want to do is I want to go into developmental pediatrics, which is working with kids with, or working with like young children with disabilities, and helping to form like a healthcare plan that best benefits them and helps them to achieve success in their future. Honestly, something that I would love to do is do advocacy work abroad. I talked a little bit about like the different statistics for inclusion in like different countries. In Europe specifically, it is super, super minimal. So the United States has been making sort of strides towards inclusion, but other countries have not been making those same steps. So I know France, a few years ago, they had the Down Syndrome Association of France wanted to air in a commercial that showcased people with disabilities experiencing joy, and the French government actually completely kiboshed it, and they said that they couldn't air it because they didn't want people to feel bad about not including people in their society. So just sort of breaking down those barriers abroad would be really awesome. But regardless of where I end up, I want to do advocacy work to some degree. So. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Maybe. Okay. Great work. Okay. Our next presenter is Kate Hornack. Kate's parents are Rick and Madeline Hornack. Kate is the Stuco treasurer, a two-sport varsity athlete, both cross-country and track, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a four-time state champion as well. Yes? Okay. She's a member of NHS, Kelly Crazies, and Paul Bearers Society. Kate also serves on YPI, which is Youth Philanthropy Initiative here in Tulsa. And this is actually an application-based community organization working toward empowering teens with the tools necessary to engage in civic education and change. Kate's current cohort is working on developing a curriculum to help teens achieve psychological safety and mental wellness. Kate is a parishioner and a religious education leader at the Church of St. Mary. She is also a frequent NTLC volunteer, where she enjoys helping kids find new ways to learn. Kate has applied to OU, OSU, KU, Loyola of Chicago, and Penn State. In the fall, she plans to begin a pre-med track of study. Kate Hornack.
Hi, I'm Kate Hornack. My project is Good Eats. So I'm going to start off. Oh, that's not on. That's awkward. So I'm going to start off with a quote from Brother Bernardine. Okay, so I'm going to start with a quote from Brother Bernardine. You cannot enjoy the cream of life if you bottle up the milk of human kindness. So I was going through the book of over 1,000 quotes from Brother Bernardine, and I chose this one because it is the only one that had to do somewhat with food, and that's what my project is about. So why I kind of chose this project, I'm going to give you a background about me. I grew up loving to cook. One side of my family is Czechoslovakian and the other is Italian. So cooking food and eating food are big parts, a big part of our life. Whether it was in the kitchen with my parents, like watching them cook, or helping my parents when I got older, making ravioli for Christmas Eve dinner. I have just loved cooking. You know, when I was little, I never watched Disney Channel. I watched the Food Network. I loved watching the Pioneer Woman. When she opened up her store, I went with my parents right away. We actually like kind of walked in the store while it was under construction and not open one day because we were so excited and wanted to see it. But so that's basically a background about me. Cooking's been a big part of my life. So this started with my research paper sophomore year. So I kind of researched 9 different diets. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I kind of just wanted to look into the risks and benefits of each diet. I researched the Atkins diet, paleo diet, ketogenic, vegetarian, vegan, Weight Watchers, South Beach, raw food, and Mediterranean diets. And one of the biggest takeaways from this research is the definition of a diet. At first I thought it was like just a way to, like a term for like a plan you go on to lose weight. But now I view it as a lifestyle of the foods you eat. Some of the diets call for low carb, some call for high protein, some call for no meat at all. So that was gave me a new perspective on what a diet is. And so going into my project, the main question I wanted to answer was, are the numerous diets that I just researched and that are projected all over the world beneficial to teen athletes? So what drew me to this project, obviously my background of cooking and my love for it. So I wanted to do something kind of with that. And then also I'm an athlete. As you can see, I run cross country and track. So I kind of wanted to tie the two together somehow, because those are both big parts of my life that I felt would be, that I was passionate about and wanted to create a project out of. So going into it, my goals for the food, I knew I was going to be making healthy food or researching it or something, and I wanted it to be enjoyable. Like, as a BK student, you know, our diets consist of Chick-fil-A after school, Whataburger after football games, ice cream, you know, from Andy's down the street. So I knew when I was researching the healthy food that I was going to do something with, I wanted to find enjoyable healthy food. Foods that teens would actually like and be attracted to want to eat. And so another thing is I wanted a physical token. I wanted something I can hold in my hands and be like, I made this for my brother Bernardine project. And lastly, I wanted to test it on actual people. I didn't want to just research people doing, or I didn't want to research athletes trying the diets. I wanted to actually have my friends experiment it for me so I could answer this question. So I'm kind of going to describe my project and the process of it here. For my physical token, I made a recipe book. So it's right over there. I scrolled through hundreds of recipes trying to find the best, the one that teens would actually want to eat from 6 of the 9 diets I researched, because a lot of the diets are very similar. So the ones that I researched for my cookbook are the paleo, ketogenic, vegetarian, vegan, Weight Watchers, and Mediterranean diets. So that was the physical token part of my project. And then I wanted to do something with it to answer my question, and that's where my test subjects and the boxes come in. So I selected some of my friends to be test subjects who do sports, very active kids, and I didn't know what I wanted them to do. I didn't know how I wanted to actually test out and answer this question. So I knew I had the recipe book and all these recipes, and so then I came across the idea of making boxes like HelloFresh boxes or Blue Apron, those ones that you order online and they're shipped right to your door and they're healthy meals. So after I figured out my test subjects, I picked a recipe for each of them out of the cookbook and put together these boxes. And then afterwards, I had them fill out this survey to kind of get the answers to my question. So those are pictures of the box and then the recipe book up there. So my test subjects. I picked 5 of my friends. I picked 3 girls and 2 guys. So they come from a long range of different sports. So on the top, Ben and Charlie. Ben runs cross country and plays tennis. Charlie's a football player. I was definitely most excited to see the results from them because I've known them for a very long time, and I know that they will eat whatever's put in front of them and large quantities of food. So I was really excited to see the results from that. Next, I have Alex. Alex runs cross country and plays soccer. Then Ella, she runs cross country and track. And then Caitlin runs cross country but has been injured the past year. So she does cycling instead. She's actually Cycle Bar's #1 customer probably because she goes every morning. So those were my test subjects. So after doing this project and having them cook the food and all that, I realized that the biggest success of my project was the boxes, because originally for my project, I wanted to take my love of cooking and share that with them by making them a meal. I was gonna host a big dinner and have a lot more test subjects and cook for them and do this big dinner, but with COVID, I wanted to be safe, and so I decided to have them cook it on their own in their house where they're not around everyone. So that's when the idea of the boxes came into play. So what I learned during this is time management. I am the biggest procrastinator you will ever meet. So doing a big recipe book with a bunch of different recipes, and then getting the ingredients when there's literally so many ingredients for the healthy recipes that I chose, that took a lot of time, and so now I have learned time management from it. Another thing is organization. Again, with the recipes and the recipes and the recipe book, I have learned that I have to be organized, make sure I have all the ingredients, all the measurements, all everything laid out perfectly with the table of contents and all that, resources with my cookbook. So I've learned organization, and I'm very appreciative for my good friends that helped me with this. So basically, this is what I've learned from my project. So the first picture up there is sticky Japanese chicken that Charlie had. Charlie really liked it. He loved it. His family's actually considering making it again. So that was good to hear. The next one on the top is a chimichurri cauliflower rice bowl that Caitlin made. Below that is a chicken shawarma pita pocket that Alex made. And then on the right is the mango zucchini lettuce wrap with chicken that Ella made. An honorable mention that did not make it up here is Ben Jones's meal. He got vegan mac and cheese, and it was not very good, and his camera quality and videography skills were not very good as well, so we don't have a picture of that. But so basically what I learned from this, with athletics, you have to be fueled. You can't participate in football or cross country or any of the sports listed if you don't have energy. And how you get your energy is from food. So to answer the question of how these diets affect or if these diets are beneficial to teen athletes is seeing if they're full or not, if they get that energy. And overall, everyone felt full from their meal except for Ben. The vegan mac and cheese did not fill him up, but everyone else felt full. They loved their meals, and the next point, the last two kind of go hand in hand. The simpleness and time of each meal. Obviously, the simpler the meal, the quicker it is to make, and with homework and extracurriculars and practice, a lot of students don't have time at night to go home and prep for a long time for a meal, and a lot of these meals required cutting up vegetables and a lot of meal prep and stuff. So they weren't very simple to make, but they said, but I love the feedback that I got from them. A lot of them said they could meal prep, or they could take out some of the ingredients that they didn't need, especially for the lettuce wraps, like leave the ones they liked, take out the ones that they didn't like, just to make it easier, because they did like the meals overall, and they did feel fueled by the meals they got. So with that, I want to thank Mrs. Tyler and Miss Bendel for running the Brother Bernardine program, and Miss Hendricks, she was my mentor. She kept me on track with my procrastination, and just I was getting the recipes and the boxes all lined up. Next, I'd like to thank Charlie, Ben, Caitlin, Ella, and Alex for being my test subjects. They were so willing and excited to help, and that just made it so much easier, especially Ella, my little Brother Bernardine partner in crime. And then next, I'd like to thank my mom and dad. They helped me put together the cookbook and put together the boxes, and took time out of their day to help me to make sure I got it all done. And so this actually is the cookbook. I can't really hold up with two hands. And then these are what the boxes looked like when they got them, as you saw in the picture. So, any questions? Miss Tyler? Like getting the food? No, but there were a lot of ingredients that we forgot to get. So thank God there is a Walmart down the street, a Walmart neighborhood market down the street from our house that we made frequent trips to while making the boxes. So, yeah. Ella. Okay, so I run, and waking up at 6:30 after eating Chick-fil-A for dinner is not the best thing to do, and I've felt the effects of that. And I can tell whenever I eat healthy when I'm running, I run better. I feel better when I run. I'm like happier. So I've noticed it in that and the way I like run and stuff. And then whenever I would eat like Chick-fil-A or Chipotle or something, I would just feel slowed down because I had so much food and so much food that was greasy and heavy and not good for me. So. Miss Tyler? I don't know. I haven't tried any of them, but I am going to. I just didn't have time to try all of them. But I did make paleo chocolate chip cookies if anyone wants to try one. I can't promise you that they're going to be the best chocolate chip cookie you've ever had, but they might be really good. So, but yeah, I'm really excited to test out some of the healthy desserts because I do have a little bit of a sweet tooth sometimes. So being able to have a dessert that's not horrible for me will be nice. So. I definitely think with athletes, it is better to have a lot of protein. So maybe not the vegan and vegetarian ones, just because you get more energy from protein. The Mediterranean one has, and it's also important to have carbs, especially because that gives you a lot of energy as well. So keto and paleo kind of steer away from carbs, but the Mediterranean has a good like balance of everything, like fruits, vegetables, healthy fats, protein, carbs. So I would say the Mediterranean one.
Okay. Our next presenter for the evening. Get it pulled up. Is Will Dawson. Will is the son of Amy and Joe Dawson. At Bishop Kelly, Will takes part in the photography club, grill club, video games club, movie club, and in Will's words, the now defunct art club. I liked that. He's a member of NHS and a volunteer at the Little Lighthouse on holidays. He's an active participant in the Young Men's Service League, an organization where high school men volunteer alongside their mothers to serve underprivileged and at-risk populations of the Tulsa community. Will is also a volunteer at the North Tulsa Learning Center. His favorite place to volunteer is the Coffee Bunker on 41st Street, and that's a nonprofit charity who accepts any donations to help give to veterans who can't afford or find food. Will is a member of the Harvard Avenue Christian Church and a member of their youth group. Will hopes to attend either OU or the U of A in the fall and pursue a pre-mid track. Will Dawson.
Thank you, Ms. Tyler. So my name's Will Dawson, as you found out, and I am part of the Bishop Kelly High School senior class of 2022. So let's just get right into this. So I didn't find any quotes really that captured what my project's about during the in the book of Brother Bernardine quotes, but I did find this great quote from Kim Fowley, who is one of the most important band managers of all times, who said that rock is a nuclear blast of reality in a mundane world where no one is allowed to be magnificent. And as you're going to find out later on, that's part of what my project's about, really. Rock music and metal music in general being kind of counterculture and being against the norm and being expressions of emotions and other things. And on the picture on the right is Jimi Hendrix's guitar, or at least one of his guitars, and the outfit he wore during Woodstock 1969. So a little bit about me. I joined Brother B in freshman year, and I'm just going to preface that by saying time flies. I remember when I was watching the class of 2019 present their Brother B capstone projects, and I'm like, man, that's so far away. I don't have to worry about that. But here we are. I changed my Brother B project topic twice. So if there's any freshman or sophomore Brother B members in the audience, just know you should make your project about what you want it to be about. Don't just because maybe your sophomore research paper is about a certain topic, you're not locked down into anything. You should be, enthused to do what your project's about. And finally, I have a huge interest in music. If that wasn't evident from the fact that my project's about it, I can't remember a time in my life where I wasn't listening to music. My mom is a huge fan of country and singer-songwriter music, and my dad is the one who introduced me to rock and roll and metal music. And so it's kind of always had a constant part of my life, and both my parents and my surroundings have been a huge influence on my current music taste. That's not to say we don't get down to some hip-hop from time to time, but those are my favorite subjects. So what is my project? Well, my project is a 20-minute documentary about named Rock and Metal from Underground Billboards. It's not about the mining industry. It's about rock and metal, the music genres. And it goes all the way from the 1960s, so the birth of psychedelic rock, so Jefferson Airplane, Santana, those bands your parents listened to. And it goes all the way to the 2020s, so it's about 6 decades. I say 2000s there, it goes past that. And now I'm going to cover the development of my project. So, up, down, successes, failures. So, like I said in the beginning, I switched my project topic twice. Originally I was going to make a paper, but when I wrote my paper, I was developing a lot of new skills. I learned how to edit video, how to create I keep going away from the mic. How to create a narrative, script, and how should I put it? Condense research into like a digestible form. And I got that mostly from school, but also from summer classes. And so I felt like doing a research paper, I didn't know if I was going to use the full extent of my abilities. So when I was writing my paper, I used it as a basis to write a script for a documentary. And I wasn't certain that I wanted to do that, but as time went on, I thought it would be the best art form to keep people's attention while teaching them. So I conducted research in several different places. A lot of online research went into this, so like EBSCO database, that type of thing. But on the right, you can see 2 pictures. One is from Cleveland, Ohio, and that is where the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is. And I went there this year, but I had also been through the area year before last. I only went this year to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I got that picture of the placard that's outside the museum. There I figured out what key points I should definitely note when I'm documenting the journey of, rock and roll music. And then on the bottom there's the Hardesty Regional Library, so a more familiar place in Tulsa. And that place, that's pretty good. It's a large library, and it has a lot of books and magazines, a lot of online resources as well. And so it was really useful to have that place near to me in case I needed to research. So why did I choose this project? Well, like I said, my upbringing was a huge part of it. My parents, who both enjoy rock and roll music, I've been exposed to it for the longest time. And what else? Oh, my curiosity for it. So even though it's been a constant part of my life, I hadn't really ever looked into it or the rich history that's behind it. And so it was always kind of this looming thing oh, this music genre just popped onto the world stage and there's no explanation for it. Well, that's not really the case. There's a lot of history behind it and how it signified a lot of social change, not only in the US, but in Europe and even in Asia. And so when I was researching this, I thought, okay, well, how should I condense that into into a way that people will want to read it? That's how I kind of came across the documentary form. So I've watched 2 documentaries about the history of rock music, and so I think those kind of spurred me to pick that as my avenue for my capstone project. And also, you know, my love for music, I already mentioned that. I just didn't want to do something I would get bored doing. And that final pointer there, it's about my sophomore paper. It helped me like kind of create the basis for my documentary. And on the left is a band performing kind of one of the first psychedelic rock epic songs of all time. So what do I want for people to learn? Well, mainly, just get this out of the way, I want you to learn about heavy music. That's basically what the whole project is about. But in close second, I want you to learn about kind of the morality that comes along with music. Music has a really strong ability to change how we view things and how we interact with the society around us. Music can convey emotions, it can convey opinions, it can convey anger, catharsis, that type of thing. So it's really important to understand like what you listen to every day on your way to work might be somebody getting their whole life story out there, but you think, oh man, I love Taylor Swift, that type of thing. So it's like, it's also an expression of American freedoms, and I'm going to get into this in a moment. The ability to express ourselves is part of the freedom of free speech, is the First Amendment. So we're lucky to live in a country that lets us express our emotions through any type of art form. And on the right is a picture of Joan Baez and Bob Dylan. Yeah, and below them is a quote from one of the greatest dancers of all time, Martha Graham. And she says that if you block art or you block your creativity, it won't be allowed through any other medium and it will be lost. So what did I learn? What did I learn? I learned a lot, but most importantly, I learned about what expression means. You can see Prince on the right, and he talks about how he does all these daily activities, but he plays music every day. And through his music and a bunch of other artists' music, they express kind of everything that they do in their life. Books, paintings, jazz, movies, photos, it's not just limited to music, are all examples of our ability to, you know, be seen and be heard without words. And our ability to create art and turn our thoughts into different media is lets us tell stories, teach lessons, convey emotions, that type of thing. And, you know, coming off of that, I talked about this in the previous slide, we should value our freedoms. As Americans, it's kind of our God-given right to be able to express ourselves, not just through the First Amendment, but through, you know, all of the amendments. And, or well, maybe not that many. But the First Amendment, definitely, the freedom of speech. And if we are to censor what we think is true or what we don't want other people to hear, then it's kind of a violation of what the founders set out to accomplish. So we kind of earned and deserve the right to free speech and freedom of expression. And yeah, finally, I learned heavy music has a rich history, just like all other music. It was made the target of smear campaigns. It was challenged by parents across the country. I mean, not just parents. A lot of people had problems with heavy music, but it has history just like every other genre. Even if people didn't like it, it still persevered to today. So what do I hope to accomplish? Well, music is art, and art is a sign of the times. And throughout history, we've seen that art has been used to send messages through things that words can't do justice to. So globally, music can carry a weight through not just lyrics, but through the messages in their songs. And on the right, I wanted to get this story out. This is the band Sex Pistols performing God Save the Queen. And if you listen to the song, it's not the brightest song, of course, but it's upbeat. And in the song, it was released on the 25th anniversary of Queen Elizabeth being crowned, and it was on this day called the Silver Jubilee. And it basically equated monarchism to fascism. But it's up to the reader to decide whether or not that's true. But it was an expression against the current, state that Britain was in. And it's probably the most censored song of all time. I mean, obviously nowadays you can just go on YouTube and find it. But back then, the only way you really heard music was through the radio or through records. And it got banned on all major airways and any chain retailers for records in Britain. So that leads kind of into my second point, which is to educate on censorship. And educating on censorship is really the only way to avoid it. And telling people young and old about how censorship can affect how other people grow up or how other people view like certain issues, it's how not to censor certain things. It's kind of a collective like teaching moment. Like we can teach people what and what not to censor. Obviously, not all censorship is bad. This is the main message I want you to take home. Not all censorship is bad, but censorship of all is bad. And it's important to society, I think, as a whole, learning what censorship does, because it nearly killed one of the most diverse genres of music. And I get into this in my documentary, but during the 80s, there was such a big pushback against heavy music that a lot of people started getting rid of it or throwing away paraphernalia from their houses because they thought it was going to be gone forever. So what are the effects of my project? Well, a lot of skills that I developed. I learned how to document things visually. So, as a documentary, I had to learn how to film things. I had to learn how to research, how to compile things into a script. All these skills I learned from Brother B, or the Brother B program. And now that I know how to do these things, it's not an everyday skill, but it's something that has kind of rounded me out as a person. Like now I can say, well, I know how to edit a documentary. That's an often had conversation. And I know I will have taught others when they watch my documentary, because a lot of my documentary is about teaching others about expression and censorship. So I think when people watch it, they'll be able to pick up on what I'm trying to put down, And finally, understanding culture and music in relation to social change. A lot of people kind of gloss over music. I mentioned this. A lot of people gloss over music as just it sounds good, but a good portion of music isn't like meaningless. A lot of people try to purvey messages through their songs. And on the right, there's Tina Turner and Janis Joplin singing in Madison Square Garden. And she has one of my favorite quotes of all time is, whatever's bringing you down, get rid of it, because you'll find that when you're free, your true creativity, your true self comes out. And I have a trailer for it, so let's get this on the road.
Innovation and art are a match made in heaven. When it comes to music in America, innovation and art come through social change, such as wars and progress. Just as Woody Guthrie and Bob Dylan made folk music their venue for protest, metal bands like Black Sabbath and Metallica became the forefront of counterculture music. Led Zeppelin and Twisted Sister alike have come under fire for their choice to speak out against systems of oppression and meaningless violence.
I seem to be the only person addressing this committee today who has been a direct target of accusations from the presumably responsible PMRC, and how many times this can amount to little more than character assassination.
Rock and roll, punk, and metal have all become musical symbols of the American freedom of expression.
It is a pure outpouring of emotion, good, bad, love, hate, whatever. That's its appeal. It's a very fundamental, strong, powerful sound.
And their influence on our culture will never be forgotten. In this documentary, I've compiled months of heavy music research and media to illustrate the history of two of the most disputed and challenged music genres, heavy rock and heavy metal. I hope that you will enjoy, as I did, uncovering the history of heavy music and the bumps that paved the genre into what it is today.
So, big thank you to everybody who's helped support me along the way, but some special thanks go to Miss Tyler, my mom and my dad, all of the Brother B program, and she can't be with us today, but Miss Morgan, she doesn't work at BK anymore, but she was a big help in writing my paper and discerning the future of my project. So, I forgot to add a question slide, but any questions? Thanks for making my job easy. I appreciate it. Oh, that's a tough question. I mean, I want to say censorship, but even my dad has stories about his music being censored in his house. There's so many stories from people that I've read about where there's just been such a great opposition to music. Even if some people can't understand what the music is about, there's a lot of people who try to put labels on what you listen to. And I just think that it's important for every individual to decide and interpret music for themselves. So the most surprising thing that I've learned is, I don't know, I guess how judgmental people can be. V? That's a good question. I wish I could say yes, but I seem like I'm pretty chill and I listen to metal music. I mean, no, I'm just going to say no, because a lot of people listen to music that doesn't really fit their personality. They just like what it sounds like. And that's kind of how I got started on the journey of listening to what I listen to.
I know, nobody has used the pointer tonight. It's just, I know, right? Now everybody's like, oh, the laser pointer, right? Yeah. Emma, it's all you. Our next presenter is Emma Williams. Emma's parents are Heather and Dan Williams. Emma is the captain of the speech and debate team, where she's qualified for nationals twice. She is in the Latin Club, or I'm sorry, she is the Latin Club Communications Coordinator, a member of Stuco and NHS. She's also a link crew leader and a Comet ambassador. Outside of Bishop Kelly, Emma is a hub coordinator for the Sunrise Movement Tulsa, which is a national youth movement organized and committed to stopping the environmental crisis. And she also serves on the Youth Advisory Board for the Youth Services of Tulsa. She's an AP Scholar with Distinction and a National Merit semi-finalist. Emma is also one of our most dedicated and committed volunteers at the North Tulsa Learning Center. She states that she likes to serve there because of the unique opportunities to create a community for kids who deeply desire it and to stoke passion for academic success. Emma has applied to 18 schools, including, I just gave some, Columbia, Rice, Sarah Lawrence, Stanford, UC Berkeley, Wellesley, TU, OU, and many more. In the fall, she plans to study political science and philosophy. So, last but certainly not least presentation of the night, Emma Williams.
Okay, like you said, my name is Emma, and my project is titled Empowering Through Environmental Education, an Eco-Centered Workshop for Middle School Students. And spoiler, it is exactly what it sounds like. So first, we'll just kind of talk about like my involvement with environmentalism. So since I was young, I've been like really passionate about nature and our planet. And when I entered middle school and like started getting on social media, I became like deeply involved with politics and social justice. So becoming really involved in climate justice and those movements became the obvious consequence of that. My freshman year, I went vegan after researching the environmental impacts of different diets, and I went to my first protest regarding climate change. So you can see up in the top right, I have a picture of all the people who are there, and on the left, you see me with my sign, which is, the sign is true. I missed Coach Burke's Modern World History class for that thing, but I think it worked out. And then this year, just about a month ago, like Ms. Tyler said, I was brought on as one of the hub coordinators for the Sunrise Movement, an environmental organization focused specifically on engaging and empowering young people to take control over what's largely their future. And you can kind of see the impact of that philosophy through my project. So here's a quote from Brother Bernardine: "All the darkness in the world cannot put out the light of a small candle." And, you know, sometimes I have an ego, I think all of us do, but I'm humble enough to understand that solving climate change is not an achievable goal for my capstone project. But by getting other people passionate and educating people about the issues that I'm passionate about, it's easier to create an organization and a movement of people who are able to actually affect change and put out some of that darkness in the world. So why this topic? It built on my sophomore research paper, which essentially was a timeline of U.S. climate policy from like the conservation efforts of President Theodore Roosevelt in the early 20th century to now the decades-long fossil fuel lobbying that we see throughout the political sphere. And also, kind of like, as you can tell from the last slide, I'm really passionate about the environment and those issues. Not only because I feel like it's an existential issue, but also because it encompasses so many other issues, from racial and economic injustice to simply preserving our planet. So, and you can find so many different reports and articles and speeches on this issue because it's so present in the political sphere, but I think it's summed up most authoritatively by the United Nations in 2019, which is that we really have until 2030 to make ambitious progress on curbing our effect on our natural world before the effects of climate change become irreversible. So because of that, I think it's necessary to engage as many people as possible in this cause and in this movement to be able to actually achieve this goal. And I also learned about this thing called the 3.5% rule in a training I did with the Sunrise Movement during quarantine, which is that for any social movement throughout history, if you engage 3.5% of the population really intensely, then you are going to have a higher chance of success. So pulling on that, I think it's important to get people passionate about these issues. So then we come to my actual process. So I divided it into kind of 3 big phases. First was creating the presentation and the handout. So like Ms. Tyler said, I applied to 18 colleges, so it's unsurprising that I'm very indecisive. So I went through a few different phases of the project. I thought that maybe I could do a documentary, but I can't really force people to watch a documentary or force people to read a book or anything like that. But if I give a presentation where I trap middle schoolers in a room with me, I can make them listen to me. And so that makes it very effective. And halfway through creating the presentation, which I'll give you like a few slides as an example after this, just so you can kind of see what that looked like, I also put some of that information into a handout to give out to the students in the classroom so that they could take it home with them. And if they wanted to remember like the action steps I gave them later, they had it right there in front of them. So the second big step of my project was contacting teachers. So my goal was really to go to some of the diocesan schools in the Tulsa area, because not only did I feel like I'd have some good clout and pull as like a Bishop Kelly student, as a Brother Bernardine scholar, but it would be the most convenient for me to like get out of class and go 10 minutes over versus, oh, let's go to Oklahoma City or something like that. So I was able to successfully get into contact and schedule with teachers from St. Mary's, St. Pius, and All Saints. And so the third phase of the project was actually going to talk to the students and gauging the feedback I got from those. So last Wednesday, I went to talk to students at St. Pius, and this was about 20 students. It was an 8th grade homeroom. And it was kind of the typical response. There were some who kind of thought it was funny that like someone was coming and talking about environmental issues, which I expected. There were a few that were disengaged, but I was surprised by the amount of students that were genuinely interested in what I had to say, and they had these really thoughtful questions, and they were just nodding really intensely like they were engaged with what I was saying, and that was some great feedback for me. And then today, actually earlier today, I went to go talk to School of St. Mary's, their entire middle school, so that was about 75 kids. So it was a little bit of a step up, but it was kind of the same thing. They were very excited to have a Bishop Kelly student there. I heard them saying, oh my God, are we in trouble? Why is someone from Bishop Kelly here? They were not in trouble. But ultimately they were really just excited to hear me talk. They were excited to see what I had to say, and they were really engaged with it. And they were asking good questions, and they were excited to take the handout that I have for them, take it home, and really apply these things in their own lives. And then tomorrow, I'm going to go talk to a 6th grade class at All Saints, which I think is going to be like 15 to 20 students. And my hope moving forward, even beyond the confines of the capstone project, is be able to talk to more people. Because my passion for environmentalism goes beyond completing my capstone project. One of the people I work with Sunrise Movement is a teacher at Hale Middle School. And when I told him about my project, about the environmentalism, he said that he could get me into contact with administration there. And even going to Broken Arrow or different schools like that, to beyond the 3 schools that I've been able to talk to be able to engage more and more people, because that's kind of my goal. So I have some sample slides from the presentation to show you guys. So first, here was kind of the overview table of contents thing I had. And so the way my presentation was structured is I had 3 major issues: waste, pollution, and global warming. And for each of those 3 issues, I gave some very coherent action steps. So for waste, the action steps were the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. For pollution, there were different behavioral changes that could be made. And for global warming, being the big existential global issue it is, the big action step really was learning and engaging other people, kind of like I was trying to do. So here's an example of the facts slide that I gave for the waste issue. You can see I had a little quote there, which my brother told me more specifically was from Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, not just Spider-Man. And then just some different numbers about the billions of pounds of plastic waste produced every year by just the U.S., the timeline for different plastics to decompose, and raising some important questions that all this waste is creating within our society, which you can see down there at the bottom. And then here was a sample of the action steps slide from the global warming section. So I talk first, you can see about education, learning about the issue, getting other people passionate. Also eating eco-friendly. And I made sure to tell the students that I don't expect any of them to go vegan, just cold turkey, because I understand it's a very difficult process. But simply making those small changes, taking those small steps in your everyday lives, and helping other people understand that these small steps are critical helps to create that movement, that organization of people who can affect real change, and different things like that. So some different things I learned from my project. The big one was to really just be proactive, because I procrastinated a lot on this project. I was in a limbo purgatory phase for about 3 months where I had started my presentation, but I had not contacted any schools and I had not finished it. I had not put the handout together. And then about a month ago, I realized, oh my God, I have to present this project in a month, so I should probably get on it. And thankfully, it all came together. But it was very, very stressful. So definitely be proactive whenever it's coming to these big projects, especially ones that you're passionate about. The second one, I think something more broadly that I learned, was the necessity of outreach and advocacy. Just seeing these students who were just so engaged and so excited to hear what I had to say on these issues that I'm really passionate about just helped to show me how important it is to reach out to people and just talk to them. And something simple that can make a huge difference. And then something finally that I also learned was formatting information for different audiences. Because whenever it came to talking to middle school students, there was this balance that I wanted to do of simplifying an issue enough that I wasn't just going to drown them in data and statistics and stuff like that, but also giving justice to these issues that I'm really passionate about, and not just oversimplifying it so that they get a for dummies version of it, And I think it was relatively effective because I didn't see a ton of glazed over eyes, so that's kind of good. So I kind of came to this conclusion sentence in gauging the feedback and in coming to terms with this project, which is that to create effective united movements, it is necessary to engage boldly, and small actions can snowball into big ones if given the energy. And yeah, so thank you to everyone involved in this process, to Ms. Beals, who was technically my mentor, but I will admit I was a terrible mentee. I was not super involved with her, but she was critical in actually brainstorming the project and helping motivate me to get off the ground. To Ms. Tyler for being a guiding and supporting mentor throughout this entire process, and also getting me 5s on AP Gov and APUSH. For the Brother Bernardine program, for providing me a community of people passionate and focused on academics and making a difference. To the diocesan teachers who let me come and talk to their schools, Katie File from St. Pius, Chris Cunan from All Saints, and Julie Davis from St. Mary's, and also for my parents who instilled in me empathy, drive, and passion, 3 things that AP classes cannot teach. Does anyone have any questions? do have some handouts if anyone wants any. But I think one thing you can do, the big thing, is taking away from my presentation is just talking to other people, learning about the issue. But I think concretely, something you could do is regards like my waste and pollution points. So something as simple as like just consuming less non-renewable resources, using a reusable water bottle in place of like a bunch of Dasani or Aquafina ones, just minimizing the amount of waste you're putting out into the world. And kind of like I said in like my concluding thesis, these small actions can give people the hope to pursue bigger ones and to unite with other people to even accomplish even bigger scales. So yeah. Anything else? Okay. Okay. As many times as they will let me. Because obviously I have one more scheduled, and I have another one beyond that that's a pretty high likelihood. But if I could contact more teachers and they'll give me times to come in, I'd be more than happy to take like the 30 minutes out of my day to get people passionate about the things I care about. I think already Bishop Kelly's doing a great job with the recycling programs, with the exception of those few unnamed teachers who refuse to put recycling bins in their classrooms. But I think as a whole, unnamed. But I think that's a good start because it gets people in the practice of pursuing those habits that allow them to take accountability for those things. And I think even in some theology classes, especially morality and Catholic social teachings, there has been a slight focus on caring for our natural world, preserving the environment, and like preserving the world that we live in and caring for God's creation. So I think that helps to instill those values, and the recycling program especially gives a practical end for that. But yeah. I think I remember I had done some research on that in my sophomore paper. I think it probably has to, I think there's a lot of political underpinnings to that about notions of liberty and restrictions. We saw a lot of that over with the COVID-19, but like I'll avoid getting too much into that, like those political underpinnings. But I think understanding that there are those predispositions to taking certain actions, and also I think it's this population density issue. Europe, you have so many smaller, more highly concentrated areas versus the United States. It is so spread out, and there is such a diversity of opinion, of lifestyle, of residence that makes it difficult to pursue some sort of unified end like that. If that makes sense. Yeah. Anything else?
Okay. How about one more round of applause for all four of our presenters? So thank you all so much for coming tonight. I would just like to say thank you to all the parents who have helped in this process, who have, helped contribute financially, emotional support, all of the things that you have given to these scholars. Our next presentations are on Wednesday, December 1st. We're obviously not going to do it next week, right? Because we're all going to be baking turkeys, hopefully, right? So the supply chain continues. I would also like to give a huge thank you to Mr. Hembry, who is our live stream coordinator in the back. And I would also like to give a shout out and thank you to Mr. Dan Schmitz and his computer students for helping to put together the slides at the beginning of all of the academic journey pictures from your childhood, which I know you guys were so excited to see. Right. So just one more time, thank you guys so much for coming. If you did not sign in, if you could please do that. There's a sign in for families, scholars, just initial by your names. And if there are any freshmen who are applying to the program, you have a separate sign in sheet too, if you'll just initial by your name so that we can have a record of who's in attendance. So thank you guys so much. Live Jesus in our hearts forever.